welcome to Ubiquity for the Love of Each Other. I am your co-host, Ada Marie Bobineau.
I'm Camille Lord Wyatt, and we're excited to have you join us today. We have some wonderful brothers with us who are political and educational and legal. We have Menotti Jenkins, who came into Ubiquity in 1984, and we have Maurice Mitchell, who we call Mo, who came into Ubiquity in 1999. Welcome, Menotti, and welcome, Mo.
Yes, well, thank you.
Welcome
Happy
to Ubiquity's podcast called For the Love of Each Other. And for the audience who doesn't know, that is the theme for every Ubiquitarian. That is our motto and our slogan, for the love of each other. Very important for our community to love on each other. The Black man, the Black women, that's what we do. And so that's what these brothers do. That's what their lives have been about. And so we want to jump into the work that they're doing, and then we're going to talk about what we're doing collectively to uplift our communities.
Yeah, but first, Camille, as we always do, first we want to start with, since Ubiquity was born on the campus of Howard University in 1973, we're 52 years old. We want to first just kind of get a sense of, like, why an HBCU? Why Howard University? How did you all get to Howard? Let's start with the youngest of the group. Let's start with Maurice. How did you get to Howard?
How did I get to Howard? Well, I grew up like 20 minutes from Far Rockaway, Queens, in a town on the South Shore of Long Island called Long Beach. And both of my parents, I'm first generation college, so both of my parents did not go to college. They're immigrants from the Caribbean. They came to this country in the 70s. And, growing up, they always set the intention that we would be college bound. So I always felt like, all right, I'm going to go somewhere. And we grew up in a pretty Black conscious household. And so at some point, I wasn't sure where I was going to go, but I think it's a confluence of things. Just the Black consciousness that was kind of sort of supported in our household led me to Black consciousness, led me to wanting to be in service and be service interested. So that was kind of one piece. Then I think, I was in a multiracial high school, but we were tracked. So I was tracked into AP and honors courses. So the classes I was in, I was the only Black student. And after several years of being the only Black student in my classes, even though there were a number of Black students in my high school, I did not necessarily want to continue to be in predominantly white spaces. Like after years of that, I was sitting in my English class when the O.J. Simpson trial announcement happened. That was one of the most excruciating scenarios. Everybody was white. The teacher, all of my classmates, and I could feel the energy just looking at me. I was like, man, that is just like one example of some of the excruciating situations I was in. And then, I went on the last thing is, like, I went on a Black college tour when I was, I think, a junior in high school. And one of the dates we stopped at Howard's campus, and it was one of the early days in spring. And you know how in the yard, early days of spring, everybody's out in the yard. And it was so beautiful. I was like, yo, I feel like this is some sort of utopian reality. I want a little piece of this energy. And that kind of sealed the deal for me. So I applied to a bunch of schools, all in DC, because I was a poli-sci major. I wanted to do something in politics. I wanted to be near the seat of government. But Howard was in my mind was my number 1, 2, 3, 4 choice. So when I got accepted to Howard, even though I got accepted to other schools in DC, that was where I was going to go.
Yeah, that was similar to my experience too. Took one visit. I was like, I got to come here. What about you, Menotti? Why an HBCU? Why Howard?
Well, I have to tell you, the first time that I ever went to school with Caucasians was law school, Indiana University.
Wow.
From my kindergarten through college was always Black schools. And that's where my father in particular wanted his children to go, the black schools. My father was an educator, as was my mother. And my father knew and experienced the reality of being in integrated schools, and he didn't want his children educated in integrated schools. Now, interestingly enough, both my parents went to HBCUs. They went to Claflin, which at the time was Claflin College, now Claflin University in Orangeburg. We brought my sister to college back in 75, up to Howard. And my brother and I looked around and we were like, wow, this looks great. At the time, I would have been, so 75, I was probably 12. And then my brother went on to Howard afterwards. And so I was there in high school playing basketball, getting in all sorts of mischief by myself. And so my brother came home one summer and he said, you know, man, you're going to love Howard. I'm telling you. I said, I'm not sure I want to go to Howard. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I think I want to go to that other black school in D.C. He said, what are you talking about? I said, I think the name of it is Georgetown. I said, I watched the games. The coach is black. All the players are black. That's another black school. He said, Minotti, Georgetown's not a black school. I said, you don't know what you're talking about. It is. He said, what do you mean I don't know what I'm talking about? He said, probably the only black students at the school are on the basketball court. So anyway, I dropped that idea and decided to come to Howard. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I'm happy I made that decision. I'm happy for the people I met. I'm happy for being introduced to Ubiquity, and the rest is history.
So and you're from where? Where are you from? Where are you from? Tell us where you're from.
Charleston, South Carolina. Actually, Johns Island, South Carolina, which is right outside of Charleston.
How did you get introduced to Ubiquity?
Me?
Yes, Minotti.
Maurice, my brother. He I believe Maurice joined Ubiquity in 82, I believe it was. And I think, yeah, and I was already on the campus, and he told me about this organization, Ubiquity, that, emphasized Black culture. You know, he talked about the 7 principles of the Nguzo Saba. He told me all about that. And, he introduced me to it. And I got a chance to meet some folks that were already in the organization, including my former sister-in-law, Stephanie. And I said, hey, Ubiquity seems like the type of organization I would love. You don't have all this hazing and all of that. From what I understood, it was about education and knowing history. And that's how you became a member. And I just became immediately attracted to it.
It's so funny.
Maurice, what about you?
Hold on. I wanted to
share. I'm sorry.
No, it's so funny because when we talked to the founders, how a lot of them came into Ubiquity, or the knowledge of Ubiquity was Donald Temple put out a call. Like, he just hollered at a bunch of folks. And he said, and once they heard his voice, they just migrated to the U. It was really a phenomenal conversation that you guys should check out. Mo, how did you get introduced to Ubiquity?
All right. How did I get introduced to Ubiquity? Well, when I came to campus, I came wanting to be an activist and wanting to get involved in Black consciousness. Mm-hmm. And so I came to campus in 97, right? And it wasn't apparent where the Black consciousness was necessarily on the campus, right? So, the culture of Howard had shifted, and it was not the idyllic sort of breeding ground for the Black radical tradition. And so I spent a lot of time just kind of searching people out. And then I noticed there were these sisters who were they were some bad sisters. They were on point. They were on time. They just moved differently, and they were clearly conscious. They were involved in putting on events that were about the Black tradition. And I learned I was like, who are these people? Because I'm trying to get down, right? I just want to be down with them, right? I just want to be down with them. And then I learned they're from Ubiquity. And so how can I be a part of this organization? And so in my second year, I decided that I wanted to do anything I can to gain the respect of those people. And so it was really to gain the respect of those people that from afar I had respect for. And that's what brought me into my Ubiquity my ubiquity journey. And it was just, like coming into Howard, I had this idealized idea of Howard would certainly be a place where everybody would be pro-black, pro-black, pro-black. And it actually wasn't the case. It wasn't necessarily the case. I had to find it.
Wait a minute. What happened between 84, 86, and 99? Because we were pro-black, we were active. I mean, there was a lot of activism on the campus.
Menotti was vice president of PUSA, and him and Chris Cathcart, they were like kicking ass.
But I have to tell you, Ada and Camille, there were definitely elements on the campus that were not so much pro-black. I mean, we had some fights. Oh yeah, we had fights, political fights on the campus. I mean, I guess it's just like with anything. You're going to have variations of thought, and you have people at Howard who come to Howard from different experiences.
Yeah.
And many of them, didn't go to black schools, so they want to be in a black environment, but they weren't ready to fully embrace everything that we were talking about at a black school. So you had variations, and I'm not sure how it was in the late 90s, but I know even in the 80s, you had disparities and we had conflicts. And so, I think over time, things probably change and evolve depending on the climate in the country. But, I'm not surprised to hear Mo said that he didn't find that, that you had a lot of black consciousness when he came here, because I think some of that even existed when we were there.
Yeah.
Ooh, Mo, you missed out.
Yeah.
But it's all good. It's missed out. We
but
had protests. We sat in the A building. We stormed the
And
South
I suspect
African
they did some of that
embassy.
too, right?
Yeah, we had our moments, but the explicit, overt black consciousness, it has ebbs and flows in terms of what is the main feature of black youth culture at a particular moment. And there's certain times where that is the main feature, and there's certain times where it's not gone, it's just it's more submerged. And when I came in, it was more submerged. It was more, he's in the news right now, but the main cultural vibe was more whatever Diddy was doing. It was all about the Benjamins. It was that type of energy, right? Which is not necessarily, it's black, but it's not necessarily overtly politically and culturally pro-black. You know what I'm saying?
So were you a poli-sci major by any chance?
Yes,
and Menotti, you were
Journalism.
Yeah, journalism. I remember.
Okay, straight journalism.
Yeah, print journalism.
Oh, okay.
But Camille and Ada, I was going to say too, and a lot of the difference probably had to do with the fact that when we were at Howard in the mid '80s, remember this was during apartheid.
Yeah,
apartheid was very hot. You had Reagan in office. So you had a lot of things that were right in our faces in terms of being anti-black, and it forced many of us who probably didn't even expect to be so pro-black to be pro-black. As you evolved into the 90s, and I think as Mo was getting into, things started to change a bit, and so I could definitely see why there might be those divergences than what we had when we were there, because again, by the time he came into Howard, there was no apartheid. I guess Nelson Mandela was probably president when you came in. Yeah. Well, we were a part of bringing that to fruition. Right. We were at the South African embassy protesting. We had the anti-Reagan stuff going on. When he Stevie
Wonder's song "Making a Holiday."
Exactly. When he came in, Bill Clinton was president, and he had pulled out his saxophone and fooled a lot of black folks.
That's right.
So it was definitely a different time. So I can see why there was that difference.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And look, and it's almost a full circle moment, because if you look at what's happening now, I imagine that the tenor of political energy on campus is probably pretty high. In response to the blatant anti-blackness of the federal government, MAGA, Trump, and all that.
That's how things ebb and flow.
Yeah.
Mo, have you been in DC? Because I know I don't know if Ada's ready to talk about working families, but have you been to DC to do any recruiting or any work?
Oh,
for families?
I'm in and out of DC
Okay.
often.
Mhm,
and, we have, the work that I do now. We're a
I don't want
massive.
to jump the gun. I don't want to jump.
No, I know. The reason
wanna-
I asked that is because I was wondering if there is, because we talked about that energy being on campus, and I'm wondering if that was a place for you to pull from that energy, because Ubiquity is still alive and well. We've celebrated 52 years, I believe, the organization, and the folks that just came into the group, they're just as as we were. So that energy is still there, and I don't want us to forsake those of us who still have those voices on campus. It's very important.
Well,
one of the things that I think that is critical is the exposure you got on campus for all of us. But the exposure, who especially during the trial period process, because Mo, we were talking to you, and something changed your life based on you attending as a requirement for a trial period.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to just talk about the type of people we were exposed to. Farrakhan came on campus. Oh my God, I can't. Everybody, Malcolm X is,
of course, Maulana Karenga,
we brought Maulana Karenga. We brought Sonia Sanchez.
Everybody.
Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture.
Kwame Ture.
Everybody,
yeah. But those type of interactions, those type of exposures, change people's direction, like yourself. So I want you to talk about that.
Yeah. For trial, we had one of the required events was to go to the Kwame Ture or Stokely Carmichael Rankin Chapel address that he had in 99, and it was transformative for me, right? Because up until that point, I knew I loved Black people. I knew I wanted to be involved in service. I knew I wanted to be involved in politics some way, but there's a lot of different directions you could take that. And when he spoke, I felt like he was speaking directly to me, because when I left that chapel, I had set on a direction in life that I have not deviated from, right? Because, he said a lot of things. It was really powerful. He was very committed to organizing for the all African People's Revolutionary Party. That's right. And but one of the things that he said that was so powerful is he talked about why it was so important for Black people to organize and to be part of organizations. And at the end, after he gave a really, really powerful speech, he invited people to join the All African People's Revolutionary Party. But he was like, look, for a host of reasons, you may not agree with us. You may not agree with our program, right? And you should understand what our program is. But if you don't, your job is to join another organization. It's like he said, I don't agree with a lot of things that the NAACP or the Urban League is doing, but I'd rather have you join them than not join an organization, because all Black people must be organized. That is our job. We have to organize it. Organize. And he's like, look, if you survey the scene and you don't see what you need from us or from the other organizations, then your job is to start your own. Right. And so when I left, I was so compelled by that. It was that was such a compelling message. I was like, well, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be an organizer. I'm going to find an organization, and I'm going to build organizations. That's what I'm going to do with my life.
That was that aha moment.
Yes. And the brother Mo, you're on point, because I've seen Kwame so many times, and that he was consistent with that theme. We must be organized. If you don't like our organization, join some organization. That was his consistent theme. And if anybody ever asked him, well, brother, are you going to ever update your message? He would say no, because the message still applies.
That's right.
You have to be organized. And that's a universal theme that transcends time. Our people have to be organized. So yeah, I mean, Kwame, if I didn't know that you actually heard him, brother, I would know after you said that, because that was definitely that was his theme.
That's right. And I've incorporated, when I speak, I incorporate that story and I incorporate that message because it's such a North Star that
Absolutely.
and
So
too many
let
people are activists moving around without organization, and they
Right.
and they need to build one.
let me ask if what part the Nguzo Saba played in forming the man that you are today, being this organizer.
So all of the principles, obviously, but I would probably say the one that sticks out to me the most is probably some combination of collective work and responsibility and cooperative economics. I mean, I think those are core, and I say that not to suggest that the other ones aren't as important, because I believe all 7 are definitely important, but those 2 in particular stuck out for me.
And you've incorporated them into your life and your life's work. In what way?
Absolutely, and particularly as it relates to cooperative economics. I have my own law practice. For 15 years, I was at big white law firms. I was a partner at some of these firms, and I'm happy I had that experience, because let me tell you, I really learned how to be a lawyer at their firms. But I knew at a certain point it was time for me to make a move and to do my own thing and to establish my own business and to connect with my own community. And that's what I did. I literally stepped out on faith. I had 4 clients that could continue to afford me, and I took them with me. I brought my hourly rate down. I started my own firm in 2011, and I haven't looked back. And I'm just happy to have done that. So I say that to say we really need to look at establishing our own businesses. And if there's nothing that this time should do for us, it certainly is having our own. We have so much talent in our community, and so we have to begin to really look at doing our own thing. I don't have a problem with learning, as you should, in their environment sometime, because they've monopolized it. And so you learn what it is that you need to learn there, and then you go off on your own and you do your own thing. So the cooperative economics was very important for me.
Mo?
Wow. Well, today, self-determination.
Yeah, that's me.
Shakalia, self-determination.
Shakalia.
Yeah, and creativity, right? I'm very committed to the fundamental philosophy of democracy, right? The idea that we should have a say in the decisions that impact our lives, and that we as a community should determine for ourselves the direction of our community, right?
Yes.
And so I look at a lot of the work that I do through the prism of self-determination, right? When I think of, Black people, the generations and generations of our conflict with law enforcement. Well, in a democracy, in an actual democracy, right, the military and police should be under civilian control, right? So if we were actually democratically and determining the direction of our community, there wouldn't be a conflict between Black people and the police, because we will determine how our communities are policed, how we achieve safety, right? We would determine from the ground up. So there would be no separation. The fact that there is a separation means, okay, we're occupied.
Yeah.
This isn't democracy. If you're saying there is a conflict between the police and the people, that is, you're describing a condition of occupation. We've been
occupied then.
Right. And so to me, the prism thinking about self-determination, that's very powerful, because then it's like, what are the things we would have to do to actually go from being occupied to being actually in a place where our communities are democratic and we are self-determining the direction. And then there's a lot of things underneath that. There's the economic conditions, there are political conditions, and it could help you go from all right, well, that's the North Star. Then what are the steps in between to get there? So I really like that. And that's kind of the North Star that I have, right? I'm not just doing things to do things. I'm doing things so that we could decide the things that we believe in our community. And we could actually have difference in our community. And we could debate those differences and figure out where we go one place or another. That's really
Mo, I have always known that we needed to police ourselves, number one. I don't know if that's the same thing. And that we also need to be involved in the law enforcement and or legal communities more than we are, so that we can have some say in that. It just doesn't seem to be a reality. Well, not the fact that we're not more in law enforcement and more in the judiciary, because we are, but trying to achieve what you want to would be ideal. It just doesn't seem that it could be a reality, unfortunately. Like, how could that happen? What do we need to do? How could that happen?
Yeah, I mean, so in my experience, right? There's no shortcuts, and it starts on the local level, and it starts through, what we said Kwame Ture has focused on, right? We actually need to organize. We need to organize deep on the community level. We need to, so like the police, like for example, in the United States, the police technically are under the civilian control of the particular city or town. So the mayor, city council, the mayor and city council should be people who align with the interest of our people. If they're not, we should vote them out. And because the police, the police, they're civil servants like anything else, right? The civil servants like all the other civil servants. And when you're not getting the service that you want with the civil servants, there's a process to change them up. The mayor could decide who the police chief is. And also, you could decide what public safety looks like. It doesn't have to look like a bunch of armed occupying forces, stopping and frisking young Black folks. That is the mode of policing that has basically been, adopted. But there's all different ways of thinking about public safety, right? And so the only ways we could practice that is if we, like in this case, we have to take over government, since government is the one that is deciding that. And oftentimes what happens is that, the people in power who can make the difference, they're generally, they're moved by the interest of the real estate lobby, because that's how they get their money in order to run and win office. Or they're moved by the interest of the Fraternal Order of Police, because oftentimes they're giving them money, right? And so if we want to break that, we need to organize, so that this is the work that I do, so that we could have independent people in those positions making different decisions. So right now, we endorse Ras Baraka, who is a Howard University alum, for governor. And, crime is down 60% in the city of Newark because he has a different philosophy about policing, right? It isn't perfect, right? But it shows that when the civilian control of the police has a different philosophy and a different relationship to Black people, in a Black town, Black city that has a lot of challenges, all the challenges any other city has, challenges with poverty and resources and all those things, you can have a great relationship with the community and turn the corner on public safety while keeping people safe. It can happen. And so that's just one piece of it. There's a lot of other pieces, but I do think actually having actually putting in place accountable people in those positions like mayor and city council, that is one way we could begin to turn the corner.
I just want to say, I mean, just to back this up a little bit, we have two heavy hitting brothers here in Ubiquity. Mo is the director of the Working Family Party, started with Black Lives Matter as an organizer. And Minati has his own law practices and so law practice. And Minati, you defend what is the area of law that you defend? Because both of you all are doing very heavy hitting stuff that is in the realm of activism and social change. And so we want to keep speaking to that. I want to talk to you, Minati, what areas you go to, but Mo, I want to also backtrack with you about your starting with Black Lives Matter and growing to the Family People's Party. But let's start with Menotti first.
Yeah, well, I represent largely small businesses, which are in most instances Black businesses. In my main office is in Chicago, but I have an office in DC as well as in my home in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. So a lot of my clients are Black businesses. Either persons trying to establish their business, already have their business, and they have a lot of legal issues, and so I counsel them. And when they get into disputes, I take it to court. One of my primary business areas is an area called intellectual property, which I'm sure all of you know about. Copyrights, trademarks, rights to publicity issues. So I deal with a lot of the creativity, entertainment. So those are the types of clients I have. And, I found it to be very, very beneficial. I mean, I love being able to help people, particularly my people. Mm. I love being able to walk into a courtroom and have people look at me and look at my clients and say, okay, what's this going to be about? And I love arguing. And I love arguing as to, why my clients are right and why the other side is wrong. Mm-hmm. The case I told you I have in Texas right now, it's not even an area that I normally practice in. It's an area called wrongful death. And a young man who was living in Chicago, who I knew, and I always went to the barbershop that he cut hair at. He called me one day and he said, I moved to Houston. My wife wanted to have a partial hysterectomy, and they killed her. They killed her, Menotti. They killed her, and I need you to represent me. And that's so. Yeah, this happened in 2019, and in fact, it was Houston Methodist Hospital. Unfortunately, the physician was a Black female. Oh. She was brought in for a partial hysterectomy, and she ended up dying. Wow. And so I actually took her deposition yesterday. It was very interesting. So I'm not going to go off into the details of that, but I say that to say, even though that's not one of my areas generally, I did it for somebody. I did it for a family, and I'm fighting for his rights. And he's been waiting for 6 years to get justice. And so we're right on the precipice of him getting justice. And so I enjoy doing that type of thing, but at the same time, I still read, I still study, I still, educate people. I still write about what's going on in the world. And that's a lot of what I'm doing now. So,
one of the reasons why I wanted Menotti to join Mo is because I said to Menotti, Mo reminds me of a young you. So when he was younger, when we were on campus, Menotti was you, Mo. He was that guy, him and his crew. That's what they did. That's what we do. Menotti, are you still politically active in some way?
I would say I am. But one thing I'm not doing, and Mo's actually encouraged me to get back into it, is to do more organizing, which I'm probably going to do through my church. I go to Alfred Street Baptist, which is in Virginia. You all might be familiar with it, and they do a lot of stuff organizationally. So I'm going to start doing more organizing with Alfred Street Baptist. All right. One thing I did want to mention, and then I'm going to let Mo chime in. Mo, one of our crowning achievements when we were in Houston, me and my best friend in the world, Chris Cathcart, we were roommates and best friends. One day we said to ourselves, it makes no sense that students can go through Howard and not have to take a Black studies course. A lot of people didn't think it was the truth, but it was. You didn't have to take a Black studies course. So we established a program to have Black studies instituted as a mandatory requirement. When you were there, it's been a mandatory requirement. I took the signatures of about 2,000 students up to Dr. Cheek's program that he had, and we said, the students want to have this. I only mention that to say, and I don't know if Camille and Nada know this, but
I didn't know that.
They have watered it down. It was a thing where you had to take a Black studies course in certain categories. They recently watered it down, and I have to believe it has something to do with Trump. Okay. Right now, they have opened it up to about 200 classes.
Wow.
And they say, you could take any of these 200 classes and fulfill your Black Studies requirement. One of those classes, for example, is broadcast journalism. Really? No, I mean, this is, in fact, there was an article in the Hilltop recently about it. Chris was interviewed about it.
Wow.
So now apparently this started in 2023, which would have been while Biden was in office. Trump wasn't in yet, but I have to believe that somebody heard something or saw something, some writing on the wall, and said, look, we've got to do something to water this down a little bit, just to make sure that we're not adversely affected as a university. So yeah, they have done that now. They have basically watered down the requirement that every student has to take a Black Studies course.
Well, I thought everybody was taking Dr. Carr, which was one of the subjects that they had to take.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was specifically what was Dr. Carr's course. I don't remember. It just had it was African diaspora or something.
Yeah, it was something like that, but I don't know the name, which specific title of the class was. But I know that everybody was mandatory to take this class.
Well, and what I could tell you is that the mandatory was that it had to be something within the Black Studies curriculum, and you had certain courses that were core courses for that. And Mo, you probably can speak to that more now because you were there more recently. Well, they've expanded that now to over 200 classes, like I said, including broadcast journalism. Some things that aren't even related to Black Studies.
Wow.
If you take the class, you fulfill the requirement. So that's where we are right now.
Yeah, I know swimming is a requirement, so I applaud you all. I didn't know that you all had instituted that.
Yeah. Well, you tell me, what do you recall which particular classes were required, or how many classes there were?
I don't recall. I can't remember from when I was in school. I mean, I definitely would have covered it in the classes I took, because I took Pan-Africanism. I took a number of classes that related to that. I do remember my mandatory swimming class. That was hilarious. Like I made it out with my life, but not necessarily with the ability to swim.
That was one of our crown achievements, and I think it's just been basically watered down.
That makes sense because in 23, I think that's when the Supreme Court ruled. I might be wrong, but it was either 23 ruled on the affirmative action ruling, right? So I know that a number of schools and nonprofits were trying to figure out how to adjust to that. And then if you're reading the writing on the wall and you want to hedge against a Trump administration, then you start doing your work before. This is the way that people begin to obey in advance, so they don't get caught out there, So I wouldn't be surprised. And now, FAMU has a Trump appointed president. I don't know if you've but basically FAMU has a Trumpist president, and that was and the they probably the board of FAMU probably did that as a measure in order to protect that university, which is really troubling.
See, now when we were there, I mean, we would have been all over that.
Yeah,
I'm serious.
We would have been all over that. I mean, you just not going to put that in our face, and we just don't do anything. Now we was going to be all over that.
Yeah, and the sister is not doesn't in any way have the qualifications, but this is the upside down world we live in.
Nobody in his administration has the qualifications.
I mean, this is part of authoritarianism. They say one thing and do the other thing. So their whole messaging is around merit, right? Everything's about merit, and finally they're going to restore fairness and merit, and then they find the absolutely most unqualified people to put in these positions. So
Department of Education, i.e.
beyond being liars and hypocrites, they're liars and hypocrites.
Well, it's corruption in plain sight.
That's corruption in plain sight.
I mean, that's what it is.
Authoritarianism,
politics, whatever you name it.
Yeah.
But Mo, tell us about Black Lives Matter. How you got involved in that after Howard, and how you got in that direction?
Well, yeah, I mean, after Howard, I went back home to Long Island and I started organizing. found a small organization to work at. I spent many years there, and I was involved in a lot of different work. I was doing work in that organization, and then I was volunteering with a number of other organizations, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement, this organization that dealt with prisons and jails. I was volunteering with, called Critical Resistance, and then I just kind of worked my way up in New York doing that work. Eventually, I was doing work statewide, not just in Long Island. And in 2013, Trayvon was killed, and I remember when the Zimmerman case, when the ruling came out, how that struck a nerve with so many people, me included. And I organized a mass mobilization in Manhattan, and there were thousands of people out there. And I remember after that mobilization, I felt kind of hollow because I was like, man, like, well, nobody got justice. That child's family didn't get justice. You know, we marched. It was kind of like an emotional release. But the next time something like this happens, I don't want to just organize one march. I want to try to organize a movement that actually changes the conditions, changes the laws, changes, and I want to put everything into it. So that was always in my mind. And so in August of 2014, when Michael Brown was killed in St. Louis, I felt that calling. And so I picked up the phone and reached out to people in St. Louis in August, soon after he was murdered, because at the time with social media, you could actually see a live stream of the protest, right? And so the people of St. Louis, they responded immediately. And it was really inspiring what I was seeing on the ground, and I wanted to support them. And so the folks of the Organization for Black Struggle who I spoke to, they were like, yeah, cool, come down. And I was like, great, I'll come for a few days and I'll try to support with whatever y'all are doing. And I came down and I was so inspired that I just decided then and there that I was going to reorganize my life in service of what was happening on the ground there. So I stayed in St. Louis. I left my job. I packed up my apartment. I have a kid now, but I didn't have a kid. So I was single. You know, my friends were like, what are you doing? I was like, I felt called. So I packed up my apartment. I put my stuff in my mom's garage, and I just embedded myself in St. Louis over those months. And over those months, in relationship with the people on the ground, as well as folks all around the country, we started what would become the Movement for Black Lives. And, there was a lot of activity that took place there that resulted in what people call Black Lives Matter. And I was able to be there and have a front row seat and participate in that moment that became a sustained movement. And 10 years later, there's still people who were called in that moment in 2014 that are building organizations, that are doing work on the ground all across the country, are committed to our people. You know, dozens and dozens of organizations that didn't exist then, but not exist now because of that moment. And, that moment really, the day I knew that we had shifted things in a direction that we couldn't come back from. That year I was in Tanzania. So this was a few months after I went to St. Louis, and I was talking to this older gentleman. When I said I'm from the States, the first thing he said was, Mike Brown, tell me about that. And I was like, wow, we really changed the conversation. And so, the other thing that I discovered that moved me to do more electoral politics was, social movements, when they're at their highest, they really do change the conversation, which means people in the media are talking about it, elected officials are talking about it, Barack Obama was talking about it. And so we were able to call the question. We were able to shine a light on this thing in society that people kind of, well, not our folks, but the larger society had kind of grown numb to the fact that, state violence really does come at Black people at an alarming rate. But simply because we asked the question didn't mean we were going to get a sufficient response. right? And so we asked the question, but the people that answered were the corporations like Taser International. They're like, well, put these body cameras on police and then everything's going to be better. And so what I learned from that was, okay, well, we don't just need to build the power to protest, the power to ask the questions. We also need to build the power to answer the questions. So if we could be in a position to protest, but also have people who are amenable to and are in a good relationship with the protest in positions of power, in elected positions, in governing positions, well, then the next time there's a call from the streets, if the mayor and the city council people and the senators and the Congress people were actually aligned, then we wouldn't just get a product, we would actually get justice. So that brought me to, all right, we need protest, but we also need to focus on the electoral side of the struggle, which is why I'm doing what I'm doing now.
And
Camille, do you mind if I just ask a question right quickly?
Please.
Mo, first of all, let me just tell you, you're an inspiring young brother. Okay, I mean, and this is how it should be. Okay, I mean, I'm 62 now. Okay, I guess I'm one of the elders now, right? I mean, but this is how it should be. You know, we got young brothers and sisters that inspire us and remind us of, you know, what we have done and how the framework and the platforms that we've laid. Brother, were you recently in India in the event in Indianapolis?
Oh, the recent Black organizing.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't there for that.
Okay, and the reason I ask is because I have 4 daughters, by the way. No sons, 4 daughters.
Okay.
And my third daughter in particular, she's a Yale grad. She's 29 now. She was organizing, and she lives in Indianapolis. She and my 2 younger daughters live in Indianapolis, and she called me when the event was going on. She told me about it, and so actually all of my daughters are political. All of them are political, but my third daughter in particular, she'll always say, my dad formed my politics.
Right.
You know, so she went off to Yale, and I wasn't exactly sure what direction she would go in. Freshman year, first semester at Yale, 4.0, and she was organizing. Camille and Ed, I have to tell you, I have videos of her organizing with the bullhorn and talking about marginalized communities. And I'm like so proud. I'm like, look at my daughter. I mean, look, you know. And so I say all that to say, I think it's important for us to continue to lay the groundwork for our younger people coming. And it's going to continue. If they think that we're going to stop, if they think that because, you know, somebody like me turned 62 and have my own law firm now and spend a lot of time doing business, if they think that our people are going to stop what we're doing, they're wrong.
Yeah,
because, you know, young brothers and sisters like him show me that we're still out there. We're on the forefront fighting. You know, I've always loved Black Lives Matter. I've had arguments with people about Black Lives Matter.
Oh man, we could talk about that.
I mean, but I'm like,
Black Lives Matter.
What is so wrong with the statement? I mean, you know how basic that statement is?
It's so easy.
Right, but they make it appear as though it is such a radical group, and it's like Black Lives Matter is radical. Give me a break. So anyway, thank you, brother. I appreciate that.
Appreciate
what you're doing out there.
The fact that we had to declare Black Lives Matter means it's a problem.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's pretty deep, but also the fact that that statement triggers people so much, and the statement Black Lives Matter, not Black Lives Matter more,
right?
Not just Black Lives Matter.
I mean, really, it's amazing that people would be upset about that.
It's that guilt shit. That guilt
trip. It is. And we're so proud about
real guilt trip from their forefathers.
They felt that. Yeah, that triggered. It triggered their guilt. It triggered their hatred. It triggered their bigotry.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's so important. And in the importance of it, I hope and pray that we continue to have the organization, because we know that the organization has been challenged, because everybody has done so much. The organization is national, if not even international. And we hope it doesn't stop. We have 10 minutes left.
We wanted to get into the Working Family Party because
I
from
want
Black
to.
Lives, yeah.
I that's why I'm transitioning because I would love us to come back to Black Lives Matter because we all just got all excited about Black lives.
Yeah.
But I want us the notion that we are continuing organizing in the movement, especially right now in this tumultuous time of authoritarianism. The different parties that we have to look at going forward are very important. And you've done something so incredible. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about Working Families Party because it's something that we can all do without not being one of the two parties, but it's something we must do.
Yeah. So I'll share a little bit about that. Right. So we all know we're in a very rigid two-party system, right? And so one of our assessments at Working Families Party is that, among other things, the very rigid two-party system that only basically gives you a choice of Republican or Democrat is a barrier to true democracy, right? There's a lot of countries that are multi-party democracies, right? Most countries are multi-party democracy. Canada is a multi-party democracy. Mexico is a multi-party democracy. And we have I don't know, endless choices of yogurt, but two choices political party. And so we at the Working Families Party, for the past 26 years, we've attempted to build a bottom-up grassroots approach to developing more choices, right? We don't do the top down. The top down is basically what Ross Perot did back in the day, right? He's a billionaire. He basically ran for president. And a lot of people, when they think third party, they think of like presidential run. Like I said before, there's no shortcuts. What we've done is city by city, state by state, county by county, recruit independent people who don't come from the traditional backgrounds, and we recruit them to run mainly on the local level, right? Because governing really happens on the local level. There's so much governing happens on the local level. And I'll give you one example. So I don't know if you all are familiar with Tish James, who's the Attorney General of New York.
Yes.
Okay. And, while she was Attorney General, very recently, her presence there is one of the reasons why Trump experienced any accountability, right? Because his felonies that happened at a court in New York. It's a New York case. What people don't know is that her entrance into politics came from the Working Families Party. So she was an independent, community-backed and based lawyer, right? And she was running for city council in Brooklyn, and the establishment didn't know what to do with her. The Democratic Party establishment, certainly the Republican Party. And so the Working Families Party ran her as an independent Working Families Party candidate for city council, and she won.
Wow.
That's how she got into office. And then she moved her way all the way up to be Attorney General. And so that is the work that we do. And if you notice, she's fierce. She's independent. Even
Howard Brad, how are you?
Howard Grant.
Trump hates her. He's afraid of her. Trump's afraid of her.
Oh, yeah.
She's bison.
He is
She's a bison. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
She's a bison. So that's what we do everywhere. We recruit people like her who otherwise wouldn't get in. Like the traditional politics, they weed out people like her. And so we create another pipeline for fierce people to actually be in these positions. And and we endorse people from school board all the way up to president, right? Because we think for example, we thought it was important in the two-party system that we're trying to challenge. We don't pretend that the choice for president doesn't matter for us. Like there's a lot of people who now, like there's people who theoretically are like, well, the Democrats and Republicans, there's no difference. Well, after more than 100 days of Trump, is there a difference? Right. Right. And so, what makes us is that we are non-delusional in our politics. So we'll say like, look, we have differences with the Democrats. We have serious differences with them around their position on Gaza and the Palestinians. And they're like, we could run down the list. Our differences are real with the Democrats. And in this binary choice, where it's VP Harris versus Trump, we're telling you, vote for that sister, Kamala Harris, because we want her in place, and then we're going to argue with her when she's in place on all of those issues. But there are such deep material differences between a reality with MAGA versus the Democrats that as a harm reduction measure, you should vote for the Democrats. But
harm reduction, I love that.
Right. But then your duty isn't done simply voting for the Democrats, because then you need to organize for your position and be clear about what your independent agenda is that we're going to be pushing the Democrats for. But like, it's almost like choosing who you want to push, choosing who you want to protest against, choosing who you want to move, right? And so that's the work that we do. It's like helping people have a more independent relationship to their politics, rather than feeling like they have to be sort of like cattled in one direction or another. You could have independence even in the limitations of the two-party system. So that's the
Okay.
work.
So
Mo, you got to recruit.
All right.
I'm a recruit. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No,
All
so for those of us who might still be, who are lay people who still might be confused as to, oh my gosh, well, okay, I agree. So should I join? If I'm a working family person, how do I register? Do I register as independent, or what do I do?
It's easy. It's like it's easy. You just have to, if you believe those values, then you are a Working Families Party member, and you just go to our website, right? You don't have to pay anything. You just go to our website and you could just immediately get involved. We don't ask people to change their party registration. We don't, we're happy if people donate, but they don't have to donate. There's just a lot of different ways for people to get involved. And we have activists in every state in the country, and we have chapters where we're actually building, and we have staff people in 14 states in the country, and we're growing.
And I will say that, Mo, the concept of that is a ubiquitarian concept. You can be a ubiquitarian, and you can be a Delta or Q or Omega or Links or whatever. So I love that concept that you can be a Republican or a Democrat and still be part of the Working Family.
I'm joining, Mo.
All right.
When we get off of this, I am going on to workingfamilies.org. I am dead serious. I mean, I love what you just said, brother. I really do.
Right on, brother.
We're all going to join. We all must join it, and it's hard, easy to do. And so tell us what you're doing, because I know you have to go. You're about to hop on a plane and get out of here. What does your recruiting look like? Bringing people on board as you go to different states,
and the age, the demographics too. Are they multiracial, or what's going on with it?
It's broad. It's in the title, Working Families, so it's everybody, right? We are a venue for independent politics, so a lot of our candidates are independent Black voices, like a lot of people that we endorse and a lot of people that we recruit. But we recruit and endorse everybody. So we have a chapter in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest. It's a lot of white people there. You know what I'm saying?
They're cool. They're down, right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
No. And so we like our belief is that the way that and there's again no shortcuts, but the way that we break this moment that we're in, where we're under basically rule of the oligarchs, rule of the billionaires, is by reminding everyday working people, including everyday white working people, right, that when you look at the inauguration and you see Jeff Bezos, you see Elon Musk, you see Zuckerberg, they're all there together, right? They're all there, and we know they have disagreements. We know that they compete. We know they dislike each other, right? But when you see them all together behind the president, that's class solidarity. It's class solidarity, right? And so if those people who deeply, deeply have serious business interests that have them fighting each other, if those white men could come together with their class solidarity, number one, what does that say about what we need to do as Black people? But also, if that's true, can we convince enough working class white people that perhaps they have more solidarity with different working class people who might look a little bit different than them, than Donald Trump, right? if we could do that, if we could work with Latino folks who are building independent power, and Native folks and working class white folks that get it and actually understand that we might have differences, but our differences between us and Elon are here, right? Then we could come together and actually break the back of that movement. And that has to happen on a grassroots level. And like, if we could do that, especially now when so many people, you're noticing some of their supporters are catching hell, because of their policies. And every single day you hear a new person say like, well, I voted for Trump, but this is what I voted for.
I didn't vote for this.
Because they're personally catching hell now. So every single time that happens, that is an opportunity for them to develop class consciousness, right? Where they actually reason like, oh man, these people don't have my interest.
Mo, could sometimes people are afraid of what may seem to be socialist or independent or socialist communist. Have you gotten that? And is that a fear?
Yeah. But the reality is, America is so far right. America is so far right that the things that people talk about that are socialist, I mean, what are we actually talking about? Like they're generally talking about, at least with the Democratic Party, they're talking about the policies that I guess Bernie and AOC and Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee, those policies that they're talking about. Well, what are they talking about? Healthcare. That's a standard. Universal healthcare is a standard everywhere in the world. It's just standard. It's like when you go up to Canada, the right wing and left wing, that's one thing that they agree on. There should be a universal healthcare. It's not the only place it's controversial is here. Climate change. Climate change is not a left wing. It's just real. It's just real. And it's like, well, what is your approach to climate change? Is the question that people are asking everywhere in the world except this country. Only this country believing that climate change actually exists is for some reason a left-wing radical position. So it's like these are just basic ideas that a functioning a country should have. And this is the wealthiest country in the history of countries, right? And so all the quote unquote scary left-wing people are saying is like, in the wealthiest country, shouldn't we be able to support our people's basic needs? If Cuba could do it, can't the United States do it? Right? If Cuba, who has the fraction of the per capita income of the United States and the GDP of the United States,
and fought an illegal embargo for decades.
Yes. And they have excellent healthcare, excellent education, a 99.9% literacy rate.
Wow.
Free university, right? If they can figure that out, right, can't we? It's a very basic proposition. So for those people who are scared, it's like, well, let's actually talk about what the actual policies are. And these are policies that, most people agree, like, yeah, man, like we actually, most people agree that our healthcare system isn't great, that our educational system isn't great, that all these systems aren't great, even though there's so much money running through this country. And so, call me a socialist if it means I wake up every day with, and I have compassion in my heart, and I could reason that all that money is not going where it needs to go. It's like
absolutely.
Yeah. So so I think what's happening right now in this country, more and more people are coming to that realization. They're like, like, let's put these labels aside. We just want our government to be responsive to us, and we're working harder than ever and getting less and less for it, and that doesn't make any sense.
Mo, I want as we wrap, I want you to, if you could give the top 3 action items that you would want this audience to do. What do they need to do?
Well, we started with number 1, join an organization, right? And so I invite everybody to join the Working Families Party, but for all types of reasons, you may not be into us. So follow Kwame Ture's edicts there, right? And if you are to join us, there's so much work to be done. Like right now, like today, the in Congress, they are currently trying to negotiate one of the most anti-people bills in American history. And the greatest transfer of wealth from everyday people to corporate billionaires, trillions of dollars. And the way that they do that is by cutting essential programs like SNAP, like Medicaid, like Medicare, like Head Start, like, I mean, you name it. And because they haven't yet voted on that, it's not law yet. There's things that we could do to stop them. And if you're a person of conscience, this is bigger than partisanship. You should do anything you can do to stop them. And if you're looking for ways to get involved, we have concrete things that you can do. Because look, a lot of those Republicans know that this bill is some BS, right? So you need to apply enough pressure on them to make a different choice. So we're doing that. And also the last thing, if people feel so moved, there's so many elected offices. There's school boards, there's fire boards, there's city councils, there's water boards, and these are the things that I try to get people to focus on. Because some people are like, I want to run for Congress. I'm like, slow down. Before you go try to run for Congress, learn how to govern. Sit on a school board, sit on a library board, right? And so if you're interested in running for office on the local level and getting your feet wet in the governing process on the local, and trust me, it matters. The decisions that go through a city council or a school board, or those things matter more to your day-to-day lives than some of the abstract ideas that happen in DC and Congress. So if you're interested, you should definitely talk to us. We're trying to recruit 1,000 working class people around the country to run on the local level. And if you will, people could text the word run to 30403, and then
repeat that. Yeah. Say that one more time.
Text the word run to the number 30403, and then that will put you in our pipeline, and you could become the next Tish James, right? You know, we want to support everyday people who believe that it's their time to lead. That's the best way to stop these folks. You know, the corruption of these folks is by getting in the game yourself.
We're excited.
I love it.
Thrilled to have
this was wow.
These people, these ubiquitarians who are attorneys and who
all things, all places, all times.
Being ubiquity, doing ubiquity, loving each other for the love of each other, loving our sisters, loving our brothers, and loving our community. And we're grateful that you have taken the opportunity to join us. There's a lot to do, and there is a role for you. So we want to thank Maurice Mo Mitchell from workingfamilies.org. Go there, just join, and just join. That's all. It's real simple. And we want to thank Manati Jenkins, Esquire of
Thank you all for having me, and thank you, Mo. I mean, I'm inspired.
We're inspired and excited. So
I'm about to join. I'm dead serious.
Stay tuned. Ubiquity presents For the Love of Each Other. Thank y'all. We love y'all.
Stay tuned, watch, and subscribe, and continue to learn more about Ubiquity.